Three.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will have Dr. Maddie Jeffs, Vice President for Student Services, and she will present to you a proposal and will give you more information. So, thank you, Maddie.
Thank you.
Okay.
And you know, Ruben, I want to publicly say to you and to the other leaders that I have been so impressed with your speaking and your public speaking at our board meeting. You've just done a remarkable job. You've also looked so professional. You don't know how that's made me feel. I've been so very proud of all of you this year. And it's real, because I think it's really important when you're presenting to the board that you're giving the board the impression of professionalism and that kind of thing. So I think your work with, is it Sally? Has been great. So, and I'm sure, Alice tells me we're going to continue to keep doing that, so it's good.
We are.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
You know what people say?
Even
Public
when
speaking, they'd rather be on a plane with snakes.
even when
Then
Sally
public
Fisher
speaking.
retires, I'm going to try to convince her to come back and help us.
Good. So anyway, I just want to say that to you publicly because you always take off from the meeting before we end, and I haven't had a chance to tell you. Okay, so yes, I'm Maddie Jeffs, Vice President for Student Services, soon to be retired, Vice President for Student Services at the end of June. And I'm here to talk to you about an initiative that actually started with students, and has progressed to a point that within the system, the State Board of Community and Colleges system, that we think is very important. And I am here to ask for your support. First of all, I'm here to ask for your support just generally for the whole concept. But I am here also to ask if there might be any potential for some funding from student fees for this particular initiative. So let me help explain. I think each of you has a little packet, and the packet explains in more detail about this change in data gathering that will start with the I have to make sure that I'm saying it's correct. It's going for collecting the data. Where? What does it say here? I think we're collecting it upon admission, or if not, at registration. Let me see. No, it's in web registration. We're collecting the data. And what we're doing is going to try to identify students who wish to self-identify. None of this is mandatory, it's all optional, that they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or questioning. Their sexuality, their sexual preference, identity. The reason for this is, to be frank, we collect demographic information on all kinds of subpopulations of students. Why do you think we would do that? I'm just going to throw this out to the group. Why do you think that we would be collecting data on Hispanic students, on Asian Pacific students, on whether or not you're male or female? Why do you think we would do that? Who wants to be brave? Just say something.
So we know how to better serve these students.
Well, right, because we want to know how those students are doing when they come here. You've all heard, I'm sure, the term tracking. We want to track students. We don't track it for any other purpose. At least I can say that in my area, we're not interested in tracking for any other purpose than to be able to identify if there are certain barriers to for these students that are preventing them from being retained, for being successful, from ultimately being able to graduate or to obtain that certificate or diploma. So for years, we have looked at certain traditional demographic variables, such as gender, such as age, such as ethnic group, race, ethnic group. Now we are tracking students who are veterans or who are spouses of veterans and veteran families. Well, it was about 2 years ago that the students actually came forward as part of a white paper, I think, legislative initiative to ask that we begin to track information on our students who are in the LBGTQ group. And that particular paper, though it certainly was a very positive experience, was not one that went forward. But it did come to the Washington State Student Services Commission. I'm a member of the Washington Student Services Commission because I'm a vice president for student services. So in the state board system, every college has a representative who is their chief student services officer, who is a member of that commission. And as a commission, because students are our business, our only business, and because we really value student success above everything, we as a commission said, we're going to take this up. We're going to work with students, the student groups, and we're going to take this up. And so the Washington State Student Services Commission formed a task force. The letter, which we just got yesterday, actually, so it's hot off the press, had a task force that represented the Washington State Student Services Commission, the Admissions and Registration Council, the I don't know what the ITC, which is Instructional Commission, CUSP, which is the Council of Unions and Student Programs. I forget what RPC is. I think they're the data group, and student leaders. And out of that group, they were able to come up with a proposal where we would pay a programming company to insert questions into the web registration screen that would allow students who wanted to self-identify to do so. That company, because right now you may know that we're in a transition period between our very old, very archaic student management system into a new student management system that hopefully will last us for many years. Because we're in this transition, the state board did not want to begin programming because we're not going to have the same platform. So this other company, they had given us contact with this other company. They decided they could do it, and the cost to each of the community and technical colleges would be approximately one time only, $1,500 to $2,000 to do the programming necessary for this change. So that's what I'm here today to explain what it is that we're after, why, to talk about that there is this cost. We're hoping the students would find it to be legitimate enough and to be something that you'd be interested in, that you might be willing to fund it. And that's where we are. I think if you read the letter, everything you need to know would be in there. Again, it is optional. Students don't have to fill out that section. Even if they would fit that category, they don't have to self-disclose. The data that will be collected is all aggregate data and is never identified back to the individual who filled out this form. It will be treated like any other data that we have, which is always aggregate data. And then the purpose, after we get data, the purpose is that if we find out that any subpopulation that we have of students is not succeeding and not moving forward at the same rate, say, as our majority population, that's a flag. Something may not be right. Doesn't tell us what, but at least it gives us some impetus to be looking out for what those variables or factors are that may be impeding students. So I'm happy to take questions. Anyone have any?
So, Maddie, would it
Yes.
be fair to say that they would vote on the $2,000, and then if you only needed $1,500, that's all we would
I think that would be the
contribute?
most wise thing.
Okay.
At this point, I'd be very grateful for anything because it shows that the students support this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have discretionary dollars in my budget, so I do have a very small account in the foundation that we kind of use for emergency things, like when students, for whatever reason, they need some emergency funds. We can tap into that, but it's really a quite small of account because most of the time when people donate to the foundation, let's say to have money go to student services, it's for scholarships. They just don't say, oh, just give Maddie this little slush fund. So, we really don't have, I'd be probably fine trying to find dollars from all kinds of accounts. So 2,000 at this point, that's the highest number I've heard.
Okay.
So I would think, just like what we did with our furniture,
Right.
let's have the higher end, and it's always better to.
And then you
ratchet it down.
only get reimbursed or given what you actually need. So if it
Right,
ends up being
exactly.
$1,500, then
Right.
that's what it ends up
And
being.
we haven't gotten the final amount from the company.
Okay.
This supposedly will become active with fall of 2013 registration.
Okay.
So. And I really do believe that this is a group that we would want to know that they feel included and that they are inclusive in the services that we provide, and that I hope we're going to see that they are in fact, their success rate is similar to our majority population. But if not, all that tells us is we need to look further. Because even now, when we look at our data, we're always looking at ethnic, racial, and ethnic differences. And for a long time, for instance, we found out that our Hispanic males were graduating at a much, much lower rate than our white males. And this was problematic for us. Why is that? Well, we have made various changes. We've gotten grants. We've put more effort into advising. And actually, at this point, they're just about equal to our white males. So that's a very good thing. So that's how you would use that kind of data.
So there is the possibility, if we had a cohort of students that identified that way, that we could get grants and other things from that information.
And that's another reason why research groups, although they don't want to be too delineating, you can slice and dice so much that you only have little bits, but there are grants out there that are particular to certain populations, and this is an area we have never been able really to categorically say what our percentage of students who may fit into that group might be. Even with this, of course, like I said, it's optional. So, and as you all know, when you fill out your various application forms and your registration, even your ethnicity or racial group is optional. You don't have to disclose that. So, but at least it gives us something.
You were saying that the databases are changing.
Like the what is
The
changing?
student
Demographics?
or not the demographic, but the actual programming.
Programming, yes.
Would there be the new what we're funding right now? If it passes, would that correlate with new programming that's going to come along, or will there have to be new installations and new fees and stuff that go along with it?
No, there
newer
wouldn't be any
programming?
new fees.
New fees.
So what right now, the projected cost of $1,500 to $2,000 per college is because that was the quote that we got from the programming company that's going to make the changes in the, in the computerized program where we gather that supports web registration. There should not be any further cost, just the one-time cost, and there won't be there aren't any fees associated with it. Now, you also use the term though programming, and I'd like to say, just so that we're clear, so we're talking about programming, this change in of gathering data, of asking questions, and that's what the second or third page you have actually shows you the screen that will be programmed into the web registration. So that's programming. But what I'm also saying is the data may drive us to have certain programs, that we offer students, and there'll be programming there too. But that's not what this is. Okay. Did I answer all your questions?
Have other colleges found this research method to be successful?
Well, yeah, I will say this: we're sort of on the forefront as Washington State Community and Technical colleges tend to be. There are some schools out there, and actually, I think when Ruben, you and I met, I gave you a, sort of a paper that had, or an article written by Kay Steiger of the University of Oregon, and of Iowa, excuse me, I don't know how I read Oregon in there, University of Iowa. And she says that the University of Iowa announced on Wednesday, and this was on December 12th, that it would be adding an optional sexual orientation question to its admissions application, making it the first major public research university to do so. And what she said was, today we have more and more students who are coming to our campuses already out, and giving them an option to say, I'm gay, and check a box allows the campus to be held accountable and to be responsible for their academic success and having a positive experience on our campus. That actually was a quote from Shane Windmeyer, who's the executive director of Campus Pride there. So there are some schools who've adopted this, not a whole lot. But in this case, it's going to be system-wide. So whether, it'll be available for anybody in the state, community, and technical college system. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to come in and talk to you about this. And